Hi everyone. Now this may end up being a rant video because I have been seeing this lately and it's just been annoying me. So if you are a part of the Kindle universe, you know, like if you purchase Kindle books from Amazon, they had this thing where if you go on to the device settings for when it comes to either the Kindle app or if you have the Kindle, device, there's a setting on Amazon where you can go and transfer the downloaded digital copy to a USB. I've never used it. What's the point? That's the way I have always thought about it, is what's the point of doing that? You have to have how much USB space in order to go and fit all of these books onto a little flash drive or your hard drive if you have a computer, and now all that shit's on there. I don't see the point in it, because there are things called buying the fucking physical copy of it. I knew years ago, because you have to read the fine print, the fine print. When it comes to anything that you quote unquote own digitally, you don't technically own it because it's a part of that company's system. That company, whether Amazon, Apple, Google, whatever, if they decide to erase it from their database, you don't own it anymore. So what's the point of owning digital when any company can decide to just erase that? Or they want to punish you by erasing everything off of your digital library. There's that quote, which people kind of will be like, oh, they're not doing that. There's a quote out there where, the higher up people in the world, the ones who run the world, where they'll say you own nothing and like it. That's basically what it is. Years ago, we had rental services. When you went and wanted to rent a movie, it costs you money, right? So don't go and bitch and complain when it's like, well, I spent money on that book. You spent a digital money on that book. That's what you spent on for that long-term rental, because it's basically what it is. When you go and you own that digital copy, whether it's music, whether it's a movie, a book, you don't technically own it because it's a part of that digital ecosystem that can get erased just like that. Or it can be rewritten. We've seen this with authors. Lisa Kleypas decided to rewrite some of her books. So if you wanted the digital version, you have to have the updated version. You can't have the original version. This is why you own physical media. And I hate to say I told you so. And I hate to say where I kind of have that Schadenfreude, whatever they call it, where it's like you take pleasure in people's misery. I hate to say that, but I honestly think a lot of people are stupid. You don't go and own everything through digital media. If you don't have the room for stuff, okay, then you have to go and decide what's the most important to you. I saw a comment of this person's like, well, I'm going to have to download all 7,000 of my books. You own 7,000 digital books? Are you kidding me? 7,000. You really think that you're going to get through those 7,000 books in your fucking lifetime? Or to reread them? I go and I purchase a book. This is why I say I don't purchase anything over $5 or over $5.99, because I know eventually when I get done with that book, I'm going to delete it. I'm not going to keep it on my Kindle. What's the point? I've already read the book. If I really love the book and I want to reread it again, I just buy the physical version. I buy the physical copy. This is why I still purchase DVDs. I still purchase these. And you have people who have laughed at you for owning physical media. Well, who's fucking laughing now when you get your fucking shit deleted? This happened to my one uncle, where he decided he didn't want to own DVDs anymore. He wanted to go and have all of his movies on a flash drive. What happened to that flash drive? It got fucking corrupted. And there goes all of his movies, poof, out into nothing. Now he no longer has those movies. This is why I still purchase DVDs. You know, this is the Steelbook. I purchase Steelbooks. I purchase Blu-rays. That's what I purchase. You can get them cheap. You can get them used. You know, I own this stuff. Now, eventually, there may be movies that I just don't care about anymore. I can just sell them. I can go and get rid of them, donate them. You know? So I just get really annoyed when people are like, they're getting rid of that option. I'm like, so what? You can still go through the Kindle services. And you think all these other companies are not going to do that too? They'll do the same thing. They will all do the same thing eventually. You will own nothing and you will like it. This is why you need to go back to owning physical media, owning DVDs, owning books, owning TV series. You can purchase TV series. You know what you can't purchase? Because Netflix sucks ass? You can't purchase Stranger Things. Can't do it. They make you go based on the streaming. So if you don't like Netflix anymore, now you have to like, well, I love Stranger Things, but I can't watch it anymore because I don't want to support Netflix anymore. That's how they get you. That's how they get you. Now everything's on streaming. You watch any movie you want to, basically any movie, but there's still some movies that are not available through streaming. This is why I own them on DVD. I have weird, obscure movies that are maybe like people don't even know of. I own movies like that because I know eventually I'm not going to be able to see it, you know, through cable or see it through streaming services. So it's better to own that DVD. And then you can watch it anytime you want to. And you people who are like, well, I don't own a Blu-ray player. Do you play games? Do you play video games? Do you have a PS4 or a PS5? You can play movies on there too. And I hate to like sound like very condescending and bitchy, but I get very irritated when you have people who are like this, who are like, you know, how dare Amazon do that? And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care that they do that. They're going to do that because they can, because they're a corporation. Every corporation's going to do that. If they think they can, they will do that. When you go and you purchase a DVD, most of the time nowadays, you can get a digital version of it. So you can go and just take these DVDs, and if you want to, you could go and put them in a storage unit. Every month, go and pay on a storage unit if you need to, you know? If you live in an apartment complex and you only have a certain amount of space, learn to use the wall space, you know? Make sure you have renter's insurance that'll cover everything that gets damaged in case there's a flood or in case there's a fire, you know, an earthquake destroys everything. Renter's insurance. If you live in a home, you own a home, have homeowner's insurance. This covers the cost of all of your things. And yeah, if you lose all of your physical media in a fire or in a flood, it sucks. It sucks because, you know, these movies meant something to you. And yeah, they may be just things, materialistic things. You know, it may not matter to people. But those things end up meaning something to you because it's a part of your life. Like, I had talked to somebody about this, a comment I left on somebody's video where they lost all of their physical media due to a fire. I said, it reminds me of the movie High Fidelity, where Rob, the character of Rob, is going through all of his vinyl records. And he is kind of like rearranging them a little bit. And so the one guy, I think his name is Dick, comes into the apartment and he's like, how do you have these, like, organized? And he's like, it's not alphabetical, and he's saying like, well, it's not this. And so Rob tells him it's autobiographical. And so Dick's like, no fucking way. And I'm like, there are people out there, where you categorize your collection in a specific way. Like, say maybe you own all of the MCU movies and maybe you have them through storyline, like you don't have them when they were released, you have them when the movies, had gone with the function of the story, that type of thing. And maybe you have them like that. So maybe you don't have them alphabetically, you have them another way. So, for me, it's like you could have your movies, instead of them being alphabetically, you could have them through storyline. If it's like, say, through the MCU or say DC or whatever it is, you could do it that way. But, there still is what I would say, physical media still reigns supreme. It still reigns supreme. There are people who have old textbooks, old books, books that have been around for like hundreds of years. There are people who still own those books because physical media still is the only way you could truly own something. Unless you have a government or a police, or police or whatever it is that's basically run by the government. Unless you have the government coming in and taking your physical media from you, you own that media. Unless they're doing that. Unless they're turning into like World War II Germany, where they're taking your stuff from you, your artwork, your, physical media, your books, your DVDs, letters, things like that. You physically own that stuff. No one can take it away from you, especially when you live in a free society. You could buy whatever you want. So if you want to own 1,000 books, you can do that. You can own 1,000 books physically. You don't have to put everything in the cloud or everything on this particular site. Because the other thing, too, you think about, besides the company removing these, digital books or digital movies, digital music, what if a hacker, really sophisticated hacker, decides to go into the ecosphere of the Amazon, system and deletes everything? Deletes it. You're screwed. You're fucked. So, isn't it better just to own physical media? Unless someone comes into your house and robs you of all your shit, you're good. And I don't keep all of my books. Eventually, over time, the book that I once thought was important to me 10 years ago may not be important to me anymore. So I decided to go through my books frequently and say, do I still like this? Do I still want to keep this? And I eventually take it off my hands and I don't worry about it anymore because, you know what? It served a purpose for me for that time. And maybe it doesn't serve a purpose for me anymore. Same thing with movies. There are certain movies that I love to collect that I don't want to get rid of. Maybe one day I really wouldn't care about that movie anymore. Or maybe there's something in the movie that 20 years ago I was fine with, but maybe I'm not okay with today. There's the movie Revenge of the Nerds. Still love that movie. But there are a lot of problems in that movie. When you go and you look at that movie and you're like, you know what? The nerds weren't always that great. When you look at it, the nerds weren't always the bad guys. Because when you look at how they were, they snuck into a female sorority when these women were naked and took pictures of them, video cam them. That's not good. That's like revenge porn. And then you have a scene where Lewis, I think that was his name, Lewis, is having sex with Betty Childs, and she's thinking it's her boyfriend, and it ends up being him. So technically, it was sexual assault because she did not know it was him that she was having sex with because he was wearing a mask. So I'm like, when you look at that stuff, you're like, that stuff that was okay in the 80s definitely isn't okay today. I still enjoy the movie, but you can go and look at different things and you're like, some things are kind of fucked up. And there also is other things in there too that you could say like is problematic, you know? But that's the thing. Things change over time. And I could decide today, if I don't want to own that movie anymore, I could just sell it. Someone else will buy it. I can go and take it over to the mall. There's a store there that has secondhand movies, secondhand books, and I can go and sell my physical media over there if I want to. Yeah, am I going to get the same price that I bought it as? No, because stuff like that depreciates. It's the same thing with owning a car. It depreciates over time. There are different things that when you end up owning it, that ends up depreciating. It depends on what it is. Some things increase in time, like, maybe a handbag or something like that. Maybe it's something like you own a Louis Vuitton or something like that, and then they stop making that particular, bag. So maybe in 10 years or 20 years, it could be higher in value than what it was when you first purchased it. So you decide to sell it off to somebody who really wants it, and then you end up getting money for it. But, like I said, in the end, physical media, I believe, still reigns supreme. You still physically own these books. Nobody's taking it away from you. You have this book. You own this book. You can go and pick it up at any time and read it. The only thing that a Kindle does, or any type of digital service does, is it gives you a convenience. That's what it is. So if you decide you want to go to, say, Vegas to go for a vacation, and you bring your kids with you, you don't want to bring all these DVDs with you. So the convenience is either downloading those movies onto their systems so that way they have those movies downloaded, or you have a streaming service that you are a part of. I have Disney Plus. My children will download certain movies and they will have them when we go to Vegas. So they can go and watch that movie on their iPad and it's downloaded. You can do that. So that's a service that a company provides for you. So it's the same thing with any of these other things. When you go and you buy a whole album on Apple Music, you don't own the whole album. You don't. It's basically a long-term rental, as I stated. Long-term rental that you paid for. It's the same thing when you went to Blockbuster back in the day and you rented a movie. You paid for that rental. But eventually, you had to give it back. It's the same thing with, libraries are basically free. But if you go and decide that you don't want to give that book back in that time frame that they tell you, like maybe they give you 2 weeks to read the book. After that 2 weeks, what happens? You start collecting fees. They start collecting fees on that book because they own that book. You don't own it. You rent it, basically. And if you go over the time frame of that rental, they charge you. So it's the same thing here, but it's digital. So when someone will argue with me like, oh, well, I own that movie. No, you don't. If it's digital, you don't own it. It's just a long-term rental. And eventually, that company may take that off their platform and you don't own it anymore. It's not a part of their database anymore because they got rid of it. They don't own it. Because for them, they don't own that stuff either. Like anything that Prime Video does, do they own those movies? Most of them, no. They're doing a license. They pay a licensing fee to temporarily own that movie. Eventually, it goes back to the original distributor. So eventually, that TV series that you bought the whole thing on digital gets erased from that platform. That's how things go. So if you don't understand that, you didn't read the fine print. You don't own anything through digital. Same thing with Kobo. Eventually, Kobo may not own that book anymore. You know, that author may decide they don't want Kobo to own that book anymore. So now you don't have that. So if you think like, oh, I'm going to go to Kobo and do that, it's the same thing there. They all have the same thing. Read the fucking fine print. You know, it gives you a license to basically long form own that rental. And that's it. This is why I say physical media still is the best. I will continue as long as DVDs are being, you know, distributed. I will keep buying DVDs. I will keep buying. I don't buy CDs anymore because I have Spotify. But if I stop listening to Spotify, say I don't want to pay for the service anymore. You know, my husband pays for it. If he doesn't want to pay for the service anymore, eventually what I could do is I could just go onto YouTube and say, you know what? Let me make a playlist of all the songs that I like. That either there's a lyric video out there or there's a actual video out there from the artist. Eventually that video could get deleted. So if you want to actually own the music, you buy the vinyl or you buy the CD. You know, I don't buy CDs anymore. I could probably buy vinyl if I want to, but vinyl isn't exactly cheap. And for me, I'm like, eventually I end up not liking that song anymore. Over the years, I end up like, you know what? I don't really like that song anymore, so I don't care if I don't own it anymore, you know? Where with books and movies, I have more longevity with things like that, you know? Where even 30 years later, I could still enjoy that movie, and I still own it because I physically own it, you know? So it's something that I've been seeing lately where people like whining and complaining, and I'm like, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. You know, it's like, do you think that these companies give a shit that you paid all this money for that? No, this is why I don't pay $9.99 or $11.99 for a fucking Kindle book or for paying for Kobo or whatever it is. That's why I don't do that. That's why I don't. That's why I don't go over $5. You know, eventually I will not have that digital copy anymore. Eventually I won't have it. So this is why I don't spend a lot. That's why most of the time I don't purchase a lot of books. I just go through the KU system and I basically rent the book. You know, I'm basically renting the book. I'm borrowing the book. And I'm paying a fee every month to have that service. And then afterwards, I just go and return the book. And if I really, really love that book, like I'm like, would I reread that again? Because that's the thing I have to think about. I'm like, would I reread this book again? Yes, I would. I would reread this book again. I will physically buy the book. That way I own it. I would rather have books I own and I've already read, and they're a part of my collection, and I definitely want to reread them again. Those are the books I want to own. You know, I want all of my library to eventually be with just books that I own. And if I want to, you know, buy books and all that stuff, then I have the room to do that if I want to buy books. But, you know, eventually you just have your collection, and you're fine with your collection. You know, you have your collection, you can go through your books anytime you want to and annotate them and, you know, reread them to your heart's content. And you don't have to worry about it being erased. You know, you don't have to worry about it being digital and being erased because that can happen. You know, what happens if, say, a country that doesn't like us decides to hit us with an EMP? If you know what that is. It means all of your electrical shit, fried. Done, son. What are you going to have after that? You'll have nothing. Will I be able to play these DVDs? No. These will basically be used for coasters at that point. But what can I continue to do if I don't have electricity? If I don't have digital, electronics? I could still read a book. I could still read that book. I may have to do it through candlelight, but I could still read that book. That's why I said I will continue to own physical books, the books that I love, the books that I want to reread again. I will continue to buy them, either through Amazon, because I have no choice but to purchase them from Amazon, because that's how the author has their ecosystem, and that's how they do it. And people will be like, oh, you're restricting yourself. Whatever, that's what works for that author. And I'm not going to go and shame them for that. I'm not going to go and shit on them because they decide to go through Kindle Unlimited to publish their books. I'm not going to shit on them for that. Sometimes that's the best option for this author. But if I want to physically own that book because I really enjoyed it, I'm going to buy the fucking copy. I'm going to buy the physical version. And I'm going to have it on my shelf. And I'm going to have it on there. And hopefully I don't have anything that will eat away at my books, because that does happen too. But, at the end of the day, I still physically own that book. I still physically have these movies. I still physically have CDs, technically. I still have some. And I can listen to it at any time. As long as you got electricity, as long as you have the thing to play it on, whether you have a stereo still or you have a Blu-ray player that plays CDs, that plays DVDs, or you have a PS4, PS5 that plays CDs and DVDs, you could still watch it. You could still consume that product. So yeah. It was just something I saw lately, and I've been seeing more and more people talk about it and bitch and whine about it, and it really irritates me because I'm like, why did you go and put all of your eggs in one basket? Why did you do that? Why not just have multiple ways of having that book? Whether, if you really love, if you really love this particular book, like, oh, you really love The Old Man and the Sea, and you like to take that book with you digitally, then yeah, you can own the Kindle version of it and have it on your Kindle. But it's good to have a backup of it physically, because you never know. And that's the way I've always had it when it came to things. I'm like, I don't trust digital. I've never trusted digital. And also, things can change. Things can be rewritten. And now you have to deal with the new version of this book or of this movie. Say, because they're like, oh, well, I don't like Donald Trump, so I'm going to go and erase him from Home Alone 2. I own the DVD, so I get to see his mug anytime I watch that movie. So I'm like, if I don't like him, I could just, I don't know, fast forward that part. Just a thought. So, yeah. For me, I'm like, I still love my physical, I still love having it on my shelf where I could see it at any time. I can be like, you know what? I don't really feel like watching anything, so I'm just going to go and watch these DVDs. Sit here and watch them. I have a whole set of 4 movies all in one little pack. Where like it's a whole series of these movies. The Lethal Weapon franchise. I have the whole thing. I can watch all 4 of those movies if I want to. And the other thing, too, is when you physically own this stuff, you don't have to go through a streaming service. You don't have to pay monthly to have a streaming service. If you own a whole bunch of movies and you're like, I don't need streaming service, I could just go through, like, say you go through Tubi. Tubi's free. There's another one that you can go through that's free. All you have to do is just watch the ads. But it's free to watch. You don't have to pay for streaming to go and watch these movies. You could purchase them, the CDs of them, and now you have a whole library of movies, a whole library of books. You don't have to go and have anything digital if you don't want to, you know? And so that's why for me, I'm like, maybe I have a bit of a, what was they, Scheuzenfright or whatever it is, where I'm like laughing at people's pain, but I'm like, you went and bet all of it on digital, and now it's coming to bite you in the ass. I don't know. To me, this is why I still like my physical media, because it's right there, right in my home. I can have access to it anytime I want to. But yeah, that's it for this video. That was just me wanting to rant about this because I keep seeing it and rolling my eyes at it, because I'm like, yeah, I didn't even realize that even was a feature on Kindle, honestly. And I don't really care, because you're going to go and have like this USB with all of your digital stuff. And then what happens if it gets wet? What happens if it, burns up in a fire? There goes all your shit. It's the same thing with having all of your stuff. I have all of my pictures on a USB that have all my children on it. I need to go and create actual photo books so I physically have those, because eventually that USB may get corrupted. It may not work anymore. And now all of my photos that I have of my children is now gone. So I have to get in my ass in gear to create photo books of my children and when they grew up and all that stuff. All the photos over the years that I love. Not every photo, obviously, but all my favorite photos. Those are the ones that can get printed out and become a photo book. You don't have to have photo albums anymore. You can go through a system and go and create these photo books. Costco does it. Different companies do it. And you now have all of these little books that have all these pictures of your children growing up. I think it's really cool. I definitely want to do that, but I have to get my ass in gear to do it, So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video here. Just wanted to do this little rant because I'm just tired of seeing everybody complain about this. When it's like, there's other people who said the same thing. It's like, you don't technically own it. It's like a long-term rental. And the fact that people don't read the fine print. You have to read everything of all of their terms and conditions when it comes to all that stuff, because when you don't pay attention, that's how they mess with you. But yeah, anyways, that's it for this video here. Have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. And I'll see you all on the next video. All right. Bye.